I spent almost a month building these 43 shaker style doors and drawer fronts, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the entire process from cutting all of the pieces, shaping them, assembly, sanding, painting, and installing all of them. My name is John. Welcome to my money pit. Before I get started with talking about how I built these doors, I do want to clear one thing up. When I said in the intro that it took me a month to build these doors, understand that I was referring to the amount of time it took from start to finish to have these things made and installed in the kitchen. And also please consider, I was working on this some evenings during the week and on the weekends. So it's not like I was working on them for 10 hours a day and it took me a month. I'm not in a hurry, but I'm not that daggone slow. Now for these shaker style cabinet doors, I'm going to be building them paint grade out of poplar and MDF for the panels. I've always been a big fan of poplar. It takes paint extremely well. It's fairly inexpensive and it's super easy to work with. I ripped the poplar down to 2 inches and then moved over to my miter saw with a temporary stop block in there, cut all of these things to size, and then it was ready to move on to the cope and stick on the router table, and that's when things got a little shaky. I bought a brand new set of cope and stick bits from Freud, I've never really known how to say that. These are some big, beefy router bits, and I installed them into this router table that I've had sitting in my shed forever. I don't even remember buying this thing, but I got it all set up, and I gotta be honest, it just wasn't feeling right to me. When you're using big router bits like this, you need to feel secure. You need to feel safe. And I didn't with this. I don't know if this little Ryobi router table just isn't cut out for this kind of work or what, but I don't know. I felt like those bits were just going to fly off and just tear me apart. I couldn't stand it. It was really scaring me. So I had to take things to another level. And I got to do one of my favorite things in the world, which is take a trip to Woodcraft. I ended up buying a new benchtop Craig router table setup. This is not the most elaborate setup in the world, but it got the job done for me perfectly. It feels much more secure and safe than using that old little Ryobi one. I felt so much better about it. And let's be honest with each other. It's never a bad time to buy a new tool. With the router table situation sorted out, I was finally able to start safely shaping all of these pieces. I started out with the rails, cutting the cope ends on all of those. Then I followed that up with the stick bit and cut that groove in all of the rails and the stiles. And then it was time to move on to the center panels. Here's a tip. If you're going to build shaker style cabinet doors, do not use 1/4 inch plywood for the center panels. A lot of people will tell you it's perfectly acceptable to do that. I disagree. I think the right thing to do is use 1/2 inch. And for me, I used 1/2 inch MDF. MDF is a beautiful product to work with. It is super smooth. It's easy to work with, and it's nice and solid. You're not going to have to worry about it moving or anything like that. And believe me when I tell you, the extra time that it takes to cut a rabbet around the back side of all of those center panels is so worth it when you consider how much more substantial the doors are going to feel. When you build them with a 1/4 inch center panel, they just feel flimsy and fragile. The doors feel a lot beefier and a lot hardier if you use 1/2 inch. It's worth a little bit of extra money and a lot more time. Trust me, you'll be so much happier in the end. And people will look at you as a more serious woodworker too, because your doors will just look more substantial. To cut all of these center panels, I used a combination of my table saw, track saw, and my miter saw. And then once they were all cut to size, I used the same router table that I bought from Woodcraft and cut that 1/2 inch rabbet along the back side of all of those so that it fits in nicely. Yes, it took a little while to get it all fitted properly and fine tune all of them. But again, once it was done, boy, does it make a huge difference using that 1/2 inch. Real quick before we get to the fun part, you might be a little confused as to what's going on here because you're looking at it and saying, wait a minute, John, you're indoors now. What's the deal? Well, yes, I have a space in the back of my barn that has always been there and it's always been available, but it was really full of a bunch of storage and it was just really messy and it was bad. So I kind of avoided it. I would have rather work outside, but we had some pretty rough weather for several weeks in the wintertime, and it was cold and it was wet and nasty. I wasn't going to be able to do any work. So I cleared out the back of the barn, set my stuff up in there, and then I got to work. And this also worked really good for the finishing process, but we're not there yet. We got to put these doors together first. Now, this is where things finally all start to come together, and these start to look like doors instead of a bunch of little pieces laying around. This is the exciting part, and this is what we've been waiting for. The first step in the process with every single one of the doors is to sand the center panel prior to assembly, just to make life easier. Once those are sanded with 220 grit sandpaper, I apply glue to the rails and the stiles. I just squeeze it on out of the bottle and then spread it with an acid brush. That's something that I picked up on way back probably in the 80s from Norm Abram on the New Yankee Workshop. I've done it that way ever since. Let's just call it a tribute to Norm. With the glue applied, I assemble all of the pieces and then I lay them down onto the clamps upside down. So the back of the door is facing up, and I do this for a very particular reason. I don't put these in clamps and then wait 30 minutes for the glue to dry, take the clamps off, and start on the next one. Ain't nobody got time for all of that. So instead, what I do is, since it's upside down, I'll take a 23 gauge brad nailer with 1/2 inch brads, and I will drive brads into those joints, which goes through the tongue into the groove of the stiles, holds everything together absolutely perfectly, so well in fact that you can just immediately remove the clamps and move on to the next door. It's great. I remember the day I learned how to do that, and it was a life-changing thing for me because before then I'd been sitting there waiting for the glue to dry. That's just ridiculous. Nail it with some 23 gauge brad nails, and once everything's painted and primed, you really barely even see those holes, so it's really not a big deal. Plus, they're on the back of the door. And listen, I'm going to give you a little piece of advice. If anybody ever notices those holes on the back of a door, just don't invite those people over anymore. Now, this whole process isn't all that complicated, and it's actually pretty fun. But if I'm being real with you, by the time you've done it like 30, 32 times, it gets a little old. So I gotta say, I was thrilled when all of these were put together. Now, there's one more thing that has to be done before we can start painting these doors, and that's to bore all of the holes for the hinges. I do not have a fancy machine to bore those holes, so I went and bought a cheap Craig jig. I've got so many Craig jigs, it would make your head spin. They are great at making products that just make these kind of jobs easier. I went through all of the doors, not the drawer fronts because they don't have hinges, and I bored all of these holes. Then it was finally time to make the entire back of my barn white. Now to the painting of the cabinets. For this, I first laid out a huge tarp. It's bigger than it looks like in this video footage. I stacked up a few cinder blocks and I used that to hold these doors while I sprayed them. This turned out to be not the best system because I don't have any kind of exhaust fan or anything like that. Overspray basically went everywhere. You'll see that eventually I switched up my setup to try to contain a little bit of that overspray, and it helped a little bit, but not really. I mean, because I did this in a wide open room with no real exhaust fan, overspray was a problem. It went everywhere, even though there was the tarp, and it even ruined a $180 pair of On Cloud shoes, which I was not very happy about. To spray everything, I used my Graco X5 sprayer. I love this paint sprayer. It is a great piece of equipment. It sprays beautifully. Yeah, it goes through a lot of paint. There is a ton of overspray, but the final results that you get from this are absolutely incredible. So I cannot recommend the Graco X5 more. I've had this thing for a while. I've used it a bunch of times and I love it. Paid my own money for it. Not sponsored to talk about it, just telling you what I believe. I started out with Sherwin-Williams primer. I am a Sherwin-Williams guy. Again, not a paid shill. I just love their products. I don't know exactly the product number or anything for the primer that I used. I basically went into my local Sherwin-Williams and I said, hey, this is what I'm doing. They said, here's the primer that you're going to want to use. It's like specifically for cabinets and stuff like that. So sprayed both sides of the doors with this primer, which basically meant I had to spray one side all the way through 43 of them. And then once it dried, flip them over, spray the other side. And once everything was sprayed with the primer, then I went through with sandpaper and sanded everything down 220, got it nice and smooth. A lot of people at this point would go to a second coat of primer. I didn't. I just went straight to the finish coats. The reason why, again, the Graco puts down a lot of paint. So when I did sand it nice and smooth, it didn't really burn through the primer. So it was still all there and ready for the finish coats. Also, don't pay attention to the giant paint splatter all over that hoodie I'm wearing. It's nothing to worry about. For the top coats, it's yet another Sherwin-Williams product. In fact, it's my favorite Sherwin-Williams product, which is Emerald. I love this paint. I've used it several times on projects throughout my house. It is fantastic. It gives you such an amazing, smooth, beautiful, almost factory-like finish right out of this gun. It's beautiful. To paint these was the same as the priming coats. I had to spray each side, let it dry, flip it over, sand the other side, then sand both sides, again with 220 grit sandpaper, get everything nice and silky smooth, and then go through and do the entire process again. This is a super repetitive job. You have to be into doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. I personally thrive doing that kind of work, so it didn't bother me at all. But if you are easily bored or you can't find a good podcast to listen to or something like that, you might struggle through something like this. But for me, I just kind of got in the zone, went through, I had my little routine. Every single door is lay it out, spray it off with compressed air, run my hand over it to make sure I can't feel any kind of imperfections, and then spray it. Now, one of the things I want to mention about this Emerald product from Sherwin-Williams is you do not have to have an expensive spray gun to apply this paint. In fact, I painted one of the drawer fronts for this project with a roller. I did it because I made one the wrong size. So I had to remake that drawer front, sand it, basically do the entire process that I did with these doors. I had to do it all over again for one drawer front. And when I did that, I was not going to set up this whole paint sprayer operation to do one drawer front. I had already cleaned everything up. So what I did was used a brush and a paint roller. I just put the paint on nice and thick. And let me tell you, you can't walk through my kitchen and determine which one is the one that I did with the roller and which one's the one I did with the gun. It's that good of a product. Now we move back into the house. While I was waiting for coats of paint to dry in the barn, I went and painted the cabinets themselves. With the brand new cabinets, I did the same thing I did with the doors, sanded everything nice and smooth, and then primed it with the same primer that I used on the doors, and then went through with the top coats of emerald. For all of the existing cabinets that have been here all along, I just went through all of those and put a new top coat of the Sherwin-Williams emerald on there, and everything was nice and bright and beautiful. These cabinets all looked brand new, and it was time to install 43 doors and drawer fronts. I know you're sick of hearing that number, but that's a lot. Now, when it comes to the install of these cabinet doors, it really wasn't all that fun. This was my least favorite part of it, mainly because this is a retrofit. I had to build cabinet doors to fit existing cabinets. And one of the things that I do not like about these cabinets is that there's an 1.5 inch overlay on the doors. Now, that might not mean a whole lot to you, but to a cabinet maker, that's a big overlay. That basically means that the doors are 1.5 inches larger on each side than the cabinet opening. And this is a huge problem when it comes to getting everything all lined up, finding the right hinges, getting them all adjusted properly, and everything else. It is a huge pain in the butt, which is why I was particularly tickled when a couple of people in a past video commented about how the doors are 1/8 of an inch off and all this nonsense. Hey, nobody asked you your opinion on that. And you come here and try to adjust 43 doors that have been retrofit onto old cabinets, and let's see how perfectly lined up yours are. But anyway, listen, I'm not somebody that allows the comment section to make me mad, but it was a very long process. And I got to be honest, it's still not even done. With so many doors and so many drawer fronts, there's still a few that need a little bit of adjustment. They might need to be adjusted up or maybe over or in or out. I'll get to it eventually. I don't know when, but I'll get to it. But here is the finished product. And even though there's a couple of doors that aren't lined up perfectly and I got to go in and make some adjustments, I got to say, it's a dramatic improvement over what we had before. Now, if you're curious about the hardware that I used on these cabinets, I did order these off of Amazon. I am not a huge fan of Amazon, but I didn't want to spend a small fortune on hinges and hardware. These are just simple, not super cheap, but you know, it's Amazon. You really don't know what you're getting. Overall, I am absolutely thrilled with these doors. I love the style. I love the finish on them. Sherwin-Williams emerald paint for the win. I love the fact that with all of this painted now, the brand new cabinets blend right in with the old ones. It's just really made this whole kitchen come together, and I could not be happier that this particular chapter of the project is over and done with. Even though there's still some final adjustments and everything like that that still needs to be done, I'm probably going to be adjusting these cabinet doors for the rest of my life. But anyway, there's other things that have gone on here too that I didn't really talk about in the video, like painting the walls, getting rid of that baby poop yellow and painting everything the gray. I really like the way that looks too. I just didn't feel like doing a video about it because who wants to watch somebody paint a wall? But there's still a long list of things that need to be done in this kitchen remodel, including refinishing the floors, putting on new toe kicks, building the new kitchen island and island top, and, well, new appliances, new countertops, all of it. I mean, this thing is far from over, but as I said before, it's very nice to have this major part of the project over and done with, especially when I and my wife are so happy with the results. Anyway, look forward to more chapters in this kitchen remodel coming out very soon, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.